OK. C'est bon, Roger? Everyone okay? Everyone ready? Alors, bonsoir. We're going to start off with roll call, and then we're going to just stop for a picture for the 16 days of activism. So roll call, all members of council are present. And so we will start with the picture first before we do the territorial land acknowledgement. C'est bon? Oui? Okay. So members of council, if you can indulge for the picture for this, we all get together. Actually, all men as well from the staff. If we can maybe come right here and just do a picture together. I'll explain the that part. Wherever you're comfortable, get comfortable. I think maybe if we go sideways, we can get a little bit more. Yeah.
On est le centre.
Sébastien, mets-toi donc au milieu, ça serait plus facile. Non. Merci. OK. C'est bon, tout le monde voit les petits rubans blancs? Oui. Merci. Merci tout le monde. I'll speak to that in a second. OK. Non, c'est bon. OK, alors merci tout le monde. We'll move to territorial land acknowledgement statement and moment of reflection. Councillor Armstrong.
Nous reconnaissons que nous sommes sur le territoire non cédé des Anishinaabe et les terres traditionnelles des peuples Haudenosaunee, Huron-Wendat et Kanekanhaka. Nous reconnaissons notre obligation commune de respecter, d'honorer et de préserver ces terres et les ressources naturelles qu'elles contiennent.
Attendu que le Canada est fondé sur les principes qui reconnaissent la suprématie de Dieu et la primauté du droit, prenons un moment de réflexion personnelle.
Il s'est porté la croix. Son histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Alors, premièrement, avant d'aller au numéro 4, just a couple of housekeeping items. So, this evening we have Monsieur Jonathan Bourgon, who is acting as our CAO. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Bourgon. And in line with that, I would just like to remind council members and staff in the protocol to speak through the chair when we're asking questions. Thank you very much. So we're moving to item number 4, additions, deletions, or amendments. Members of council, anything to add? Conseillère Deakin.
It's like at a baseball game when you walk onto the dime. Thank you, Joanne. I'd like to add budget brief to other
Thank
items
you.
under 20,
So
please.
under A, okay.
Or, yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Anything else? I would just like to add update on rural intersections, Monsieur Bourgon, as well, on that. So we have A and B added to, just confirming, to 18. C'est bon, Madame Camille Laflamme? 18A et B? Oui, merci. OK, alors on va au numéro 5, adoption de l'agenda. Motion to approve the agenda as presented or as amended, moved by Councillor Deakin, seconded by Conseiller Lalonde. Call for the vote. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Numéro 6. C'est bon? C'est beau. Alors, numéro 6, déclaration d'intérêt pécuniaire. Hearing, seeing none, merci. Numéro 7, l'adoption des procès-verbaux, procès-verbal de la séance ordinaire du Conseil du 12 novembre 2024. Alors, motion d'approuver le procès-verbal tel que présenté. And that is moved by Councillor Lauren, seconded by Councillor Armstrong. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Passed. Thank you. Presentation, we have none. Delegations, petitions, we have none. Item 10, consent items. So motion that all items listed under the consent items be received and as presented. Before we do so, in reading those, the item A, statement of Maison Interlude against gender-based violence. I'd just like to highlight why we are wearing these white pins. I apologize. There, I was looking for my notes. So between November 25th and December 10th, wearing the white ribbon is a way for men to express their support in the fight against sexism and violence against women and girls. Violence against women is a social problem that does not spare our community, unfortunately. Interlude House, Maison Interlude, alone helps over 500 women in Eastern Ontario each year. So we wear these as a way of highlighting this concern. So again, going back to the consent items piece, so statement of Maison Interlude against gender-based violence. B, Recreation Complex update, October 2024. C, request for the community grants from Parks and Recreation Department 2024 budget. And D, Paylist for October 2024. And this is moved by Councillor Deakin, seconded by Councillor Lauren. Call for the vote. All in favor? Thank you, and passed. Moving to item 11, reports from departments and council committees. Bylaw to exempt certain lands from part lot control report, PD 2024. This is referred to item 16 in bylaws. Monsieur Bourgon, anything to add on that? No, it's pretty standard. Members of council, any questions or comments? No, thank you. Item B, Asset Management Plan and Strategic Asset Management Policy Updates Report, CSAS-AM-2024-04. Monsieur Dagenet, anything to add?
Oui. Bonsoir, chers membres du Conseil. Pour débuter, j'aimerais remercier toute l'équipe d'Asset Management ainsi que tous les départements pour les efforts considérables investis dans ce projet au cours des dernières années. Vous ne pouvez imaginer tout le travail qui a été consacré dans ce projet pour en arriver là où nous en sommes aujourd'hui. La soumission du plan de gestion des actifs 2024 démontre que l'évaluation de nos actifs progresse dans la bonne direction et aussi met en lumière les efforts investis dans ce projet pour offrir une vue d'ensemble détaillée de nos actifs. Cela dit, il reste encore beaucoup de travail à faire. Au cours des 6 à 12 prochains mois, l'administration se concentrera sur l'élaboration du plan de gestion des actifs 2025. Pour arriver à cet objectif, une ressource technique a été ajoutée à l'équipe de gestion des actifs. Avec l'expertise technique et l'expertise financière combinée, le prochain AMP fournira une image encore plus précise des actifs de la municipalité. De plus, cette expertise technique permettra de rendre les mises à jour de la base de données beaucoup plus efficaces. Afin de nous assurer que tous les actifs sont bien pris en compte dans notre base de données, nous avons également décidé de restructurer le comité en gestion des actifs. Celui-ci inclura désormais des employés qui travaillent directement sur le projet concret et pas seulement les directeurs. Ces membres du personnel se réuniront chaque mois pour discuter des changements, des ajustements et des nouvelles études liées à la gestion des actifs. Enfin, nous avons inclus dans le rapport un sommaire détaillé de tout ce que nous planifions accomplir pour chaque catégorie d'actifs. Cette initiative vise à atteindre notre objectif que la base de données soit pleinement à jour pour l'EMP 2025. En conclusion, l'administration recommande que le Conseil approuve le plan de gestion des actifs 2024 ainsi que le bylaw proposé pour la politique sur la gestion stratégique des actifs. Ces approbations permettront de solidifier les bases nécessaires pour continuer à progresser dans la bonne direction et à répondre aux besoins croissants de notre communauté. Merci.
Merci, M. Dagenet. Alors, avant de donner la parole aux membres du Conseil, j'aimerais juste reconfirmer quelques points avec vous. So we have roughly $396 million in assets within the municipality. This year alone, the requirement to maintain and be prepared to replace those assets in layman terms is that we should technically be putting about 20% of our $50 million budget towards like putting it aside for eventual asset replacement, correct? That's the goal here. And that target will change as we get a better understanding of the gap of information we have, and it will change as well as we bring on new assets into the fold, correct?
Correct. The goal would be to be able to place $10 million
Aside. Okay.
in the reserve for asset management.
The asset management plan as part of this budget that we adopted a couple of weeks ago includes us putting enough money so that in 6 years we are meeting that requirement. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And if I looked at just this year in 2025, and I know we're just finalizing our budget brief, if I look at this year per se, in terms of what goes into asset management, i.e. putting aside money for the future to pay for bridges and roads and so on, as the wear and tear comes in, if our requirement is 10 million as of this year, our current amount that we're putting away, if I remember correctly, is about 5.5 million plus, if I look at grants, because we still have to consider the grants, albeit shrinking grants, about 1.5 million, correct?
Yes.
So out of the 10 million, we have about 7 million this year for 2024 that we are putting aside for that. So, and we've been doing this since 2018, not to this amount, but I know certainly from when I've been here, we started asset management planning way back when. Is that correct?
Yeah, since 2018.
Okay. So I think that we're certainly on the right track, but obviously there's some data analysis that we need, some further data. But even in looking at the data, I just want to confirm my understanding with you. The asset inventory that we have, we feel pretty good that we have an understanding at the 396 million. We're saying that about 77% of it is in fair or better condition. That's correct. And we do also, we also kind of state in that report that 73% of our assets have been kind of looked over for like their current status. So as a percentage person that likes percentages, 73% of that $400 million in assets, we have an understanding of the value of that, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and the reason that we don't have a full 100% assessment is because some of our assets are underground, and we're required to kind of do a little bit more research on that, correct?
Well, for one, yes, but also some of those assets, we do have the study, but it was not included it was not updated in the database when the AMP 2024 was done. So we have the information. It was not in the database. So really, we're probably around 95%.
Of understanding the
Our
situation
assets,
for our
yeah.
assets. But the 396 million is all the assets.
Is all the assets, yeah.
Okay, it's just the condition piece. Okay. And so the 10 million in terms of comfort in understanding, and I went through the process of how you calculated that 10 million, that is a standard practice in terms of how we look at the long-term value of those assets over time, like residual value and so on, correct?
Yes.
So we're just following a standard practice on that. It's not creative accounting or anything like that. It's a standard, correct?
It's a standard. Roughly, it's about 2.5%. Each category is different.
Of course.
Some are 7%, some are 1%, but in average, it's 2.5%.
Okay, thank you. Let me just look over my notes. And so we are on our way to meeting that gap. That gap, during the budget discussions, there was a lot of concerns that there was a lot of unknown in the gap. I feel a little more comfortable that we have a fair bit of known of that gap. And in some ways, I think after our discussion, in some cases, the assets may be overvalued or undervalued. So it may end up being relatively close to that, correct? So we feel relatively good about that, correct?
Well, yes, we will be adding all these studies in the database, and for the storm network, we're, right, as Monsieur Bourgon said at the budget, we can't see everything under the ground, but we are planning on updating the study for the AMP 25.
Okay, so that brings my last point before I turn it over, and I apologize, council members, for taking up a lot of time on this, but AMP 2025, so we've done one in 2024, we're doing one in 2025. What's the next one after that? Is it annual?
No, it's not annual. It just happens that there was two major update that needed to be done. The big difference between the 25 AMP compared to the 24 is we're going to be adding the service level and a financial plan that's going to be done on 10 year. So there was a survey that was it's completed now, but we've asked for the opinion of all our residents last month. It was open for about 2 months. They could fill up a survey. The questions in that survey was giving us an idea if they were happy with the current service level of our services. So now we'll be able to check their answers, see if we want to increase a service level of, let's say, our roads. Well, what's the impact, what's the financial impact to get there? And to be able to do it, if we're not increasing the taxation, well, that means we need to take it from another department. So that AMP will give us guidelines and information on what we could do to be able to increase the service level or just stay at the same or decrease, depending on what we want.
Merci. Finalement, ma dernière question, c'est au sujet du complexe récréatif. The rec complex is going to be a major asset for our community, for our township. The asset management piece is built into our financial plan for that. So although it's not included here, as it comes online, the asset management requirements and all that, and how we finance those requirements is built into our finance plan for that rec complex, correct?
Correct.
OK, parfait, merci. Alors, just the last summary, folks, is just to say that basically as of this year, if the 10 million is a requirement, in our current budget, yes, it's an increase this year for many reasons that will be demonstrated in the budget brief that's coming out shortly. There is 7 million of the 50 some odd million dollar budget that is being put away to fix assets as they come offline, as they break, so that we're not stuck paying, through the nose, getting loans and stuff like that to pay for those assets, because now we're predicting when they need to be replaced and we're saving to replace them as we go along. So the budget per se is not just we need the 50 some odd million for operations. We are also taking care of the future of our assets with that. Correct?
Correct.
Okay, merci beaucoup. I again apologize, councillors, for taking so much time. Questions and comments, members of council? Councillor, go ahead. No, Councillor Armstrong, go ahead.
Yeah, there's a couple of things. It's about the Section 3.3, the forecasted capital requirements. Just a few things to clarify in my mind. It shows that we have currently an 8.2 million backlog that the mayor has already touched on. That's fine. This graph, I like this graph because we had something similar in national defense, how we actually, it's on page 26, by the way, Joanne. I like this graph because it forecasts your requirements well out into the future. I never went out 100 years, but anyway. Those figures are all in current year dollars, as I understand.
Monsieur Desjardins?
No, inflation is part of this.
So those future figures are based on what level of inflation average over the years?
I'm sorry. I would suspect that all what you're being presented here is in today's dollars. Normally, we do present value.
Yeah.
All of these are presented present value.
It's.
But we can maybe come back on that. But that would be the way that you normally present forecasting like that. Monsieur Dagenet, ce qu'on veut dire, c'est que l'argent qu'on a besoin aujourd'hui, c'est l'argent qu'on présente, comment qu'on va le collecter. Mais la valeur qui va monter avec l'inflation, quoi que ce soit, ça va normalement venir, mais on ne planifie pas pour
Well, see, in the software, we do add the inflation, but yes, I agree in this graph,
Okay.
the inflation is not there. Yeah.
That's just what I wanted to, that's fine for me. I'll let somebody else go on. We'll come back around and somebody else may ask the questions I have.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. Councillor Deakin.
Thank you. I would like to take our time on this item tonight, so no need to be worried about taking too much time with questions. I appreciate the dialogue, and I think it's a really important topic. So my first question is a question about questions, because I had sent in about 12 to 15 to staff earlier and received some really great answers. And it was indicated that there would be a sort of table that would be shared out. So I just wanted to ask, what will that look like? Will that be a public table shared out?
Thank you. Monsieur Dagenet?
What do you mean a table? The Q&A, the document, or?
Yeah. A Q&A document with all the questions
Monsieur Dagenet?
received.
Yeah,
Like we
well-
do that with other fairly large files as well. So I just want to make sure that I'm optimizing our time here tonight.
Yeah, we'll be adding it to the report and it'll be shared.
So would that be available for residents to see as well? I think that's important. I think that, because this is something that I think I'll be very proud of doing, and it's really misunderstood as well out there in the municipal world. So I think it's important. Councillor Deakin, follow up?
There were maybe a couple that I wanted to ask tonight with that knowledge, because I know this comes up for members of the public from time to time when we're looking at investing in new capital assets around the replacement cost. And in the report throughout, it'll use the term disposal here and there, but you don't see the word decommissioning at all. So I just want to be clear in terms of when we're taking capital assets offline, would the decommissioning costs, if applicable, be included in what we're seeing here?
Monsieur Dagenet, Monsieur Bourgon?
Yes, it's included.
It's included, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, members of council? Councillor Armstrong, I'm throwing you back under. Oh, Conseiller Lalonde, I was looking at you, I didn't see a hand, so I turned my head and it's too late. Go ahead, Conseiller Lalonde.
Thank you. I'm a late bloomer. Comments or questions, I guess, sort of wrapped together. Just off the top, in the facilities, so we know that we're going to have a new rec complex in a year and a half or so, 2 years. And wondering in the facilities piece of the pie, the decommissioning, the potential decommissioning of the two arenas, do we take that into account in terms of those being disposed of or sold off or decommissioned and how they affect the asset management plan? I'm in that sense, I'm wondering what their value is, the value being given to them now out of that 98 million, appreciating that part of it, if they're sold off or rehabilitated or repurposed, because that'll be something that's leaving the building, so to speak, soon enough, and how does that factor in there? If, just get some clarity on that.
So, Conseiller Lalonde, that's a great question, I think. We haven't decided what we're doing on them, so I'm not sure that we can financially account for that kind of pulling out of it, because it may not happen that way. But Monsieur Dagenet, have we started thinking about that in these numbers?
Well, in the 10 million annual requirement, there's about 800,000 of it that is for the two arenas and the salle communautaire Camille Pichet. So when we've structured our strategy, our asset management strategy, when we say we're going to be hitting our goal in 6 years, we're hitting our goal at 9.2 million. So it's without the two arenas and the salle Camille Pichet, because technically the rec complex is replacing those three
Assets.
assets, yeah.
Okay. Conseiller Lalonde, yeah. Follow up?
Not a follow-up on this one. I have another one later.
Okay. Sure, Councillor Lauren?
Just on that one, so if we're already thinking of that and removing the 800,000 from that, what happens if one or both of the facilities remain in our possession but just repurposed?
Monsieur Dagenet?
Well, we'll just bring it back in the asset management strategy, where our goal is to get to that annual requirement in 6 years. Maybe now it's going to be 7 years, or we're going to change our strategy. But that's how we saw it for the.
I would think that because the idea is, if it has a new life, that new life or the new project for whatever asset that is, we have to come up with a feasibility to see if it's worth doing, and that would be in the cost of it. Just like the rec complex came with the asset management piece built into it, I think any new project we do now comes into it, right? If we buy a new fire truck or anything like that, it comes with asset management in it already. So I would suspect that anything we do in renewing any of these facilities would require that, to make
Yeah.
sure that it's viable, right?
And
Councillor-
since 2020, every year that we've been adding assets, we've been adding the annual requirement in our
As part of it,
strategy.
that's correct. Okay, Councillor Lauren, follow up?
Do we know the value of those assets if they're not being used as an arena?
We
in
have.
the winter, like, so winter sport arena is what I'm talking about.
I don't have it offhand. We did do what's this? We did a condition assessment, but we also checked an appraisal. Yeah, we also did an appraisal in 2019. So we'll have to do a new appraisal with. It's been you want to go?
Madame Guittard?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. So maybe I could just add that we've started the process to have some conversations with an appraiser, a real estate or commercial appraiser. So we'll be coming up to council at one point, probably in the early spring, with a report for the appraisal and like to identify the values of we keep them, we don't keep them, if we decommission and all that stuff.
Okay. Councillor Lauren, follow up?
Can we just ensure then that we get the values as an arena and as an arena with ice and an arena without ice? Because we also have the hall upstairs in both of them. We also have the slab that could be used, multi-use surface outside of ice. So there's just, those are still assets at this point. And, you know, I could foresee, in my mind, at least one of those two assets remaining ours. So I think we definitely need to know what that would be without the factor of the ice.
Yeah, and I think different options will be looked out, so like changing the zoning, for example. Could we do something else? What kind of building could it become? All kinds of options. This will be brought up to council.
So we're talking in spring, this will be
Yeah.
a part of our strategic
Yeah.
discussions there at some point, once we have a lot of, enough information to make good decisions
Council will
on
be
that.
informed.
Merci beaucoup, Madame Guittard, Monsieur Dagenet. Is that good, Councillor Lauren? Yeah, thank you. Councillor Armstrong?
Just one other a question on our forecasted capital requirements. Future growth in terms of infrastructure such as roads, sewers, et cetera, as we keep developing, were they calculated in this graph?
I'm Monsieur Dagenet, but I believe any new assets are automatically included, automatically include asset management allowances. Monsieur Dagenet?
Yes, there's no, that's our current
That's a
asset
snapshot today.
situation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But anything coming online new already has it built in. It's anything that we do financially now, it's a requirement. It's part of it, correct?
We add it, yeah.
Does that make sense, Mr.
Yeah,
Councillor
that
Armstrong?
makes sense. I understand that now. Just confirm.
Keep going.
Just one other thing, and then the next one goes with the bylaw. I know where the bylaw is down in number 16, but the bylaw did not mention the actual act that's driving this or the regulation. And I was just wondering if that would be something that should be added into the bylaw to mention why we're doing things. For example, whereas, we have a couple of whereas statements up there, but the actual act has a purpose statement in it which would be easily ported into the into our bylaw to explain perhaps much better to people why the bylaw exists.
That's a good point, Councillor Armstrong. Monsieur Dagenet, I don't see an issue in adjusting that to include the act number. Do we do that? Have we done that in other bylaws where there is external regulation?
I would need to ask Joanne.
Madame
or-
Camille Laflamme?
This could be added, yes, for sure, if we know exactly which act and which regulation it refers to.
Oui, je pense que c'est possible. Est-ce qu'on l'a dans d'autres bylaws comme ça, ou est-ce qu'on mentionne un acte? Oui?
Yes.
OK. Well, yeah, I think that's a possibility for sure.
Okay. So when we come to the bylaws,
We
or
can pull it.
maybe even make just a suggestion, and we can pass the final bylaw the next meeting, because it won't make much difference
No.
once we've had this discussion
That's
over
correct.
with.
That's correct.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Nothing more, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Conseiller Lalonde.
I just want to follow up on Councillor Lauren's comment about, and the suggestion too, or the idea that we'll be going ahead at some point with real estate evaluation or valuation. The idea that we might keep one of the buildings. In my mind, there's a possibility that we don't keep either building, and or we keep both buildings. I don't know, and I guess to that point, or in my way of thinking, because I don't know, I guess it points again to the conversations we've had before about seeking requests for proposals or letters of interest. springtime. I don't know if you would do that before you try to get the real estate assessment, or you would do it afterwards. I just want to hope that if we do assessments or new valuations, that they look at the potential for all kinds of things to happen there and what that might offer in terms of the value of the property. Developers looking to build multi-unit apartment complexes or what have you. The property value could become, or could be quite attractive for that purpose. So I guess for clarification again, we've talked about springtime wouldn't be too soon to start thinking about finding out from the community, from residents, from taxpayers and developers and people interested in investing money, what their vision might be for those buildings, and so that we can look at that, so that we're actually ready to consider some serious options by the time the new complex opens.
Merci, Conseiller Lalonde. I think that brings up a good point. I think at this stage, and I can certainly speak for myself here, these are major assets, obviously, and I think it may be a good idea for administration to come back to us with some sort of plan, like just maybe even a Gantt chart of some sort, showing us kind of what's the timeline for us to kind of to take this in. Where do the residents get involved for their input? And just for us to see it from like a few miles away before it hits us, instead of just saying it's going to be in the spring, and then spring comes and we're like, what are we doing here? And so I'm wondering if that's a reasonable request to have that. Mr. Bourgon?
Yeah, Monsieur le Maire. So I was going to propose to council that we bring back a plan of action to council, and maybe to have that item. I've heard the strategic conversation, so we do have an item on our on the agenda for that, so that could be brought back.
Yeah, so I would like to see that sooner than later in terms of just understanding what's involved, not necessarily us right away making a decision what these assets are going to become, but just to understand the layout of the plan and have our residents also see there's a timeline. Because I know myself, I've been approached by some residents and some groups wanting to know what's going on with that. So I think even if we put that out in the space, I think that's good. And Councillor Armstrong, don't feel bad at all. I've done that many times. And I actually, I just turned mine off earlier on. So, okay, Councillor Deacon, sorry.
My apologies, Mr. Mayor.
No problem at all.
I appreciate this conversation, and it's going in the same direction where I look forward as a council to having input on how administration will roll out the engagement with the public and the exploration of the different options. And the last thing we want to, I was cautioned when I first joined council about being an idea fairy. Like, that's the last thing we want to do as council, but ensuring that the process is a strong one that our community can have confidence and trust in. So I appreciate that every time that comes up, and asset management is a great time for us to be discussing those next steps as well. I wanted to make sure, because people are always wondering about roads, and we had the roads assessment that, members of the public are starting to take a look at, and just wanting to make sure that it's, that there's a public awareness here that the AMP that we have in front of us doesn't necessarily reflect the 2024 road condition assessment, if I'm not mistaken.
Monsieur Bourgon?
Merci, true, Mr. Mayor. So that's correct. The AMP that was presented does not reflect the latest condition assessment of our road network, but the AMP 2025 will.
That's correct. And Monsieur Bourgon, the value of the road network, although it's changed somewhat with the additions of new roads, is not going to be dramatically different. But there is some
Yeah, there's going to be some tweaking,
yes,
if I can
absolutely.
use that term. But in general, no, our database, or the amount of roads, was still accurate. It's more of the condition and the strategy.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the strategy piece that I was wondering about particular, because if you were looking at the roads assessment and the proposed 10-year plan there, and then you were looking at this and seeing, it said in the table 2026, $2,000 will be invested in roads. I just want to make sure that members of the public know where to find the most accurate information, and the fresher data is in the proposed, in that condition assessment.
That's correct, Monsieur Bourgon. Yeah, okay.
I had two, like I said, I had many questions into the administration. I really enjoyed reading this. This is now one of my top 5 favorite municipal documents that I've read since 2022. You know, a real sense of relief and gratitude that our administration has been following these and hitting these milestones that the province laid out, but that there has been so much happening well in advance as well, and thoughtful planning. Nonetheless, this year's been hard on our budget, and you know, looking at where we are with an increase on the taxation side in particular, as well as some of the user fees. It's not easy for councils to make budgetary decisions like that, to invest in infrastructure that needs to be done now or will be more costly down the road. That's what this plan is telling us. How do we safeguard that strategy long-term? And I'm kind of looking to other members of council in terms of the policy that we have there. There are pieces that we approve that are safeguarded against, you know, let's say that the next council that comes in, they get voted in because they promise low taxes. What happens to this strategy? And I'm glad Councillor Lorrain is raising his hand, because I would like to, over to you, Chair.
So I think I can answer that question, but considering the seniority here for Councillor Lauren, I'll give you the mic.
I hope the answer is the same as you were going to give, but the unfortunate reality is there is no safeguards. The council, the sitting council of the day can make decisions and repeal bylaws and repeal all the good work that other councils have done, the same as they would do for anything that they would consider bad work. So I get that, you know, we can sit here for 4 years and do what we feel is best for the community, and the next group of people that come in, sit in these chairs, can feel that they're gonna build on it or destroy it completely, and we have no safeguards to that, unfortunately. That I'm aware of, anyway.
That was pretty much in line with exactly what I was going to say. Thank you.
But you probably would have said it more eloquently.
I didn't say that, Councillor Lauren. Councillor Deacon, follow up?
I'll be looking at that, because I do see examples of policies and bylaws that have gone through that are tied. You know, they're kind of anchored into other structural pieces of bylaws and policies, and so they're harder to dismantle. And anyways, I want to see a long-term commitment from my township where I live in making the investments that we need to make for future generations. And yeah, we haven't mentioned climate change. It's mentioned in here. It's a scary reality, and we need councils making evidence-based decisions for the long term. My other reflection was the notion of worst first. And I look around at our neighbors, you know, different municipalities across Ontario. We're seeing a broad range of where municipalities are at with this work. And I think that Russell is doing a good job at getting us the information that we need, the best data that we can, so that we're making the best decisions we can with what we have, right? And the province is also looking at this exercise and is looking at the 444 municipalities and what's going to come back from all of these exercises. It was triggered by the province. We are an agent of the province, or creature of the province, whatever we want to call it. And the province also holds a lot of purse strings in terms of grant funding. I just want to say the notion of worst first, I'm thinking about that provincially as well, and that I'm very proud of our township, and we're going in the right direction, and I don't want investment in the future of our infrastructure to be politicized, or just that it's a risk, is what I want to say.
You're entirely correct. Thank you very much, Councillor Deacon. Councillor Armstrong.
Just one other follow-up on that, but the Infrastructure for Jobs and Prosperity Act, that was the name of the act that generated this back in 2015. Now, that was passed by the then Kathleen Wynne as Premier, but it has survived almost untouched since then. nearly a decade, which is unusual in provincial legislation like this. So I would think maybe that the provinces and the provincial governments, more than one now, may be, how could I say, very set that this type of asset management goes on in municipalities and should carry on in the long term. And I hope that's the case, because this township has done very well, and I keep hearing rumors from other municipalities, including some around here, by the way. Talk to people at the dog park from other municipalities, and they say, I wish, and then, no, we can't afford that. But we've done some good work here, and I think that we have a plan to sustain the township and the levels of service that we're providing in the long term, and I would not like to see that gutted, either at the provincial level or by a future council.
Thank you. I think, Councillor Armstrong, you have a good point. When I believe that when something is fiscally logical, like this particular act that came out in 2015, it's hard to make an argument to remove it. And so I think that our process here of being fiscally responsible for generations to come would be a really difficult one to repeal. But as Councillor Lauren mentioned, it is always possible. And it just takes a will of council. And so that's the reality of our system. But I also believe, and you know, we've started this since the 1822 council, and we're following regulations. But I think this community certainly, this township has taken a leadership role. And I concur with you, with my colleagues at the United Counties, that we are in an enviable position when it comes to that. We have other municipalities very close to us that are nowhere near this position, and they have no asset management whatsoever. So, Councillor Lauren?
So the sky's not falling, is what you're saying?
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Conseiller Lalonde, one last point on this, and we'll move forward.
Oh. I had
Okay,
so
well,
many more
you've got the
questions.
mic is what I
I
mean.
had so many more. No, again, just clarification on, you know, we have the mention of the decreasing funding from OCIF and CCBF road grants combined together, going from 1.8 million, will be lowered again in 2025 to 1.4. Are we, if you can clarify, are we expecting that we won't, at some point, won't be getting any money at all in the coming 5 years out of these grants? They'll have been discontinued or dissolved, just for clarification.
Monsieur Bourgon, Monsieur Dagenet.
Well, if I look at back in my several years now, like at the township, funds were decreased, renamed, there's another formula that came around. So I said that, yeah, I could say that those ones will likely keep on being lowered, but I believe that our AMP will be our key to obtain new funding in the future. It's hard to say how much. Well, maybe it's going to be just, it will be slim, but I think there's always going to be something or type of funding available. But definitely, yeah, I think the main point, and you touched on it, it's decreasing.
Downloading. Yep. Follow up? Are we good on this item, members of council? Oui, merci. Alors, on passe à l'item C, modification au budget d'infrastructure 2024 Q3, rapport CSAS-AM-2024-05. Monsieur Dagenet, anything to add to that?
No, nothing to add on this report.
I would just like to make a request moving forward for the report that's in Appendix A. Can we receive like a pie chart summary of completed, active, canceled, and other functional projects, just to show that in a pie chart, like where we're at in terms of that particular report? I think a visual description would go a long way as well. Just simplify for residents and so on.
No problem.
Okay, merci. Okay. Questions, comments on this item, members of council? Conseiller Armstrong?
Just one other thing. It is very good and tell us what we've spent so far. I'd just like to know if, after Q3, if we would have any forecast of surpluses or deficits that we have to manage and think about. I know we don't do that until December, but I'm looking for a heads up of things that we may have to think about prior to the late December meeting that we have, where we start moving the cash around that has, putting it in reserves or whatever.
So just a couple of points on that, and Monsieur Dagenet, please correct me if I'm wrong, but so on the capital budget piece, a lot of times if the capital, if we've approved a capital expense, whether it's spent or not, it still remains in that project. What you're alluding to, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, when we cover item E, I was bringing that up under financial reports, just to try to get a bit of a crystal ball analysis of a potential surplus, if that's or the other way around. But that's where I'll bring that up. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. Merci beaucoup. Any other questions on this item? OK. Moving to item D, sommaire des dépenses allouées par soumission au-delà de 25 000, rapport CSAS-FS 2024-21. Anything to add on that, Monsieur Dagenet?
Nope, nothing to add.
No? Members of council, questions, comments on this? No? Merci. Item E, second financial report 2024 Q3, report CSAS-FS 2024-22. Monsieur Dagenet, anything to add on that? I do have a few questions, but
Well, I got nothing to add, but you can go with your questions.
And so first of all, so on revenues for Q3, any concerns for year to date? I know we're at 33.4 million of the 42.6 budget, so roughly around 79%. Are we on target? Any concerns on the revenue side?
No. Right now, we have no concern for the revenue showing in the financial statement. Similar to this time in 23, we had not yet billed our supplementary taxes, and several grants revenue were still pending. When comparing to 23, we see that over 16% of our revenues were received during the fourth quarter. And if the same pattern occurs in 24, we should come very close to meeting our 24 budget.
Okay, merci beaucoup. And so let me take it down the statement then. So on the expenses, any issues? Q3, we're at 63% of our expected expenses. I assume that's going to be closer. I wish it would stay at 63%, but I doubt that's going to happen.
It's about the same thing for expenses in Q3 of 23.
Okay.
In Q4 of 23. There was roughly 40% of our expense that were added, so we're
close in line.
We're close, yeah.
Okay. Specifically under the Q3, can you look at the childcare expenses? Year to date, we had 383 last year, and we're at 121. Is there a rationale for that? Has it been moved, Madame Guittard, maybe, or Monsieur Dagenet?
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. At the beginning of the year or mid-year, we participated in a new software with the counties, and therefore, right now, all the revenues are added to the revenue stream only at the end of the month. So what you see there, you probably do not have the end of the September numbers, if I'm not mistaken, because it takes about 2 weeks in the following month for those numbers to be added. In the new year, 2025, we're looking into changing that and to be able to add the revenues every second week, because it is creating a bit of confusion for us.
So there is no variance in the amount?
There should.
Eventually, it's still within our target?
We should be close to target,
Okay.
yeah.
Monsieur Dagenet, oui, vous êtes d'accord avec ça?
Yes, well, the revenue was a little bit overestimated in the budget, but it's just like the expense.
The
However,
relative
this
expense.
does not mean we anticipate a loss, as expense were also overestimated.
C'est ça, OK.
So in the end, the lower revenue should balance out with the reduced expense.
OK, merci.
Yeah, because what happened, we opened up Mother Teresa at the beginning of January. So obviously, we anticipated the revenue at the highest amount of our license, which we did not have right away. So what we did not have in revenues, we did not have in expenses. So usually it balances
OK,
itself.
so relative change. OK, merci. Ma dernière question, M. Dagenet, comme conseiller Armstrong a demandé tantôt, have you looked in the crystal ball to be able to tell us if we're going to have a surplus or deficit this year?
It's currently too early to determine whether we'll have a surplus or deficit. Plus, it's my first year, so
Okay.
before I say something like that, I'll wait a couple of years.
Okay, that's wise. And in terms of process for Councillor Armstrong, can you just clarify when we will have an idea of that, and at what point do we make a decision if there is a surplus where it is allocated?
I will have the year-end transfer report. Probably there's only one council left, so it'll be at the next council. We should have a better idea there if we do have a surplus, what we want to do with it, and same thing if there's a deficit.
Alors ça, c'est la réunion du mois de décembre. On n'attend pas à janvier après la fin de l'année?
Well, I was told that it was at the last meeting of the year, but maybe I'm wrong. Is it the first?
No, I'm just asking
Yeah.
how you're going to process
No,
it.
No,
So it's usually somewhere in
Huh?
there, yeah. Okay. Okay, perfect. So questions and comments, members of council. Sorry for taking so much of the floor here. Okay, merci beaucoup. Moving to item F, Grant Applications Report 2023 Q3 Report CSAS FS 2024-23. Monsieur Dagenet, anything to add?
Yes, I would like to point out that there was a small error on Schedule A grant report. Our grant success rate for 24 is 55% and not 1.5%. Additionally, I would like to inform you that we applied for 4 different grants in October. We applied for the Community Sports and Recreation Infrastructure Fund. So for a request of 10 million. This grant was announced at the provincial level at the end of the summer. We have submitted an application for 10 million and an additional request to secure up to 44 million. To qualify for the larger amount, we needed to demonstrate that our project meets the signature new builds criteria. These are defined as high-profile projects recognized for innovative design, significant community, and economic impact. Such projects are expected to serve as symbol of progress in sustainability and technology and positively impact the people of Ontario. So if we don't meet the criteria for the signature new build, we'll still be looked at for our first initial application for the 10 million.
So
And
this-
that's for the
The
rec
rec
complex.
So this is entirely linked to the rec complex. So 10 million is what we were originally applying for. The company that we hired that are supporting us for these bids helped us understand that we have an opportunity to go for the extra 44 million. C'est ça, 44 millions en
It's
tout?
not an extra, it would be.
Tout est en
it's
tout. Alors le
en
10 plus 34, c'est ça?
C'est ça.
Fait qu'une possibilité de jusqu'à 44 millions. Ça changerait pas le monde, sauf que ça ferait du bien. Hein? Okay, well, let's hope. And I understand that I believe that a few of us will be going to Toronto to meet with some of the Ontario departments that may have opportunity to help us with that. So that's happening next week. And I wanted to also add, publicly acknowledge MPP Sarrazin, who's been very supportive for us in that, and will be there with us next week as well. So I'm looking forward to that. And just to clarify, on the actual report itself, we had requested, so Q3 2023, we had a request, I just want to make sure I understand correctly, we had requested about 2 million in grants, and this year we're up to 9 million, not including the rec complex request. Is that correct? If I look at the 2023 number, I think I see 2 million in grants. Si je regarde, ouais, 2023, ça dit 2 millions qu'on avait demandé à partir de Q3, puis tandis qu'en ce moment, on est, ouais, tu vois, le 2,25 là, total. Je cherchais à comprendre.
Well, those are grants that are, I don't say automatic, but they're the two grants that we were talking earlier. They're recurring. Yeah, that's the term. So there's the 1,096,000 and the 666,000.
Mais si je compare ce chiffre-là en 2023 au Q3 2024, on est à environ 9 millions, non? Si je regarde ça comparé à...
Oui.
Est-ce que je comprends bien on cherche à 9 millions cette année comparé aux 2,25 l'année passée, c'est ça? Oui, 2 millions environ. Juste m'assurer de comprendre.
Oui, c'est ça. Oui.
OK.
Oui, je cherchais pour un grant qui était haut, mais on a un de 6,7 millions. Là, fait que,
OK, c'est ça la différence. OK. Councillor Lauren?
Yeah, I think the point that you're getting at there is that, we get asked a lot, whether it's through public consultation or through, posts that go out or just requests that, why are we not thinking of grants? Why are we not applying to grants? Did you consider a grant? Well, this shows that we're considering all of that. Staff are on top of it. We've hired additional firms to help us with that. We just, we see the additional amount just on that one grant application that we were looking at from 10 to 44. So, we are doing it, staff is doing it, and we will continue to do that going forward.
Yeah, I think you're entirely correct. That is the point I was trying to make there. Thank you. Any other questions, comments on this item, members of council? Seeing, hearing none, thank you. All right. Oui, Monsieur Bourgon. Pardon.
Just to add, Monsieur Dagenet made the comment that we did apply for 4 major grants. Those ones will show up on the report for Q4.
Okay.
Since they were all done or completed in October.
Et ça me rappelle, Monsieur Bourgon, on avait aussi un grant pour infrastructure de 250 millions.
Donc, on a fait l'application pour l'amélioration du corridor de la route 300 en partenariat avec les Comtés-Unis. Donc, c'est un projet d'une valeur d'environ presque 15 millions. Donc, on est éligible à 50 %. Puis aussi pour la reconstruction de la rue Notre-Dame. On va prendre avantage pour la croissance on a combiné le projet essentiellement avec la conduite d'eau. So, therefore, make it a project enabling future housing, being
Yes.
now eligible for the new intake. So, that's another project that we applied for, and it could be financed up to 73%.
Yeah, so that pool of money is about 250 million, right? Yeah. And that's federal, correct?
Provincial.
Provincial, OK. OK, merci beaucoup. Conseillère Dicken.
Comme M. Bourgon a mentionné le quatrième, the fourth quarter, this isn't a report that's brought to us every quarter, is it?
Monsieur Dagenet?
yes.
Oui.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Wonderful.
Merci. Any other questions, comments on this item? No. Moving on to item G, land transfer for the roundabout at Saint-Pierre Road and Saint-Guillaume Road. Report ISPW 2024-23. Monsieur Bourgon, anything to add there?
Simplement, dû au fait que l'alignement du rond-point a changé avec la construction, donc c'est pour ça qu'il y a des échanges de terrain qui doivent arriver là, entre les différents paliers du gouvernement.
OK, merci. Questions, commentaires, membres du Conseil? Non, merci. On s'en va à l'item H, recommandation AAC 2024-02 du Comité consultatif sur l'accessibilité, adoption d'un plan d'accessibilité pour la municipalité de Russell. Alors ça, si je pourrais demander à conseiller Lalonde, anything to add to that report?
Well, I'd like to pull the report so that it can be discussed at time of voting. I'd like to propose a motion at that time. I can speak to it now or speak to it then.
Okay, so we'll pull, Madame Camille Laflamme will pull item H, and we'll speak to it at that time, if that's okay.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Chair.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Conseiller Lalonde. Alors, ça complète. Alors, all right, numéro 12. Attendez une seconde. OK, pardon. Alors, numéro 12, reports from investigator ombudsman, we have none. Number 13, notice of motions, we have none. 14, question period on meeting of the day. And so by asking questions during the council meeting, you are consenting to be part of a live broadcast and the official public recording of the proceedings. Any questions from members of the community? So just a reminder that questions must be in relation to the items on the agenda. Before asking the question, please fill out your name and address on the sign-in sheet. And if you wish to receive a response from a member of council or staff, please leave a phone number or email on the seat, on the sheet, not the seat. And if you can just state your name before asking a question for public record.
Julian Hunt.
Good evening,
I have
Mr. Hunt.
more of a general question about reports that we receive from the township.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Hunt. Is it, just to make sure it's on? Okay.
Hello?
Yeah.
Oh, it's
Okay.
just quiet. I'd like to request that the township do their best to stop using acronyms in documentation.
What's your question, Mr. Hunt? Sorry, it has to be a question.
That is the question. Can you
Okay, thank
stop
you.
using acronyms
Thank you.
in documents that
I didn't hear
are
it. Okay.
provided to the public? I know in the 80s and 90s, it was all the rage to use acronyms to accelerate discussions and communications, and we thought that it improved all of those things. But as someone who is a member of the tech space over the last decade, most large corporations and tech companies have discontinued the use of acronyms because it actually harms communication. And I think with trying to get more people involved with local politics, if we could have things stated explicitly, it would help in dissemination of information with the public.
Okay.
Just reading in the AMP, there was a lot of acronyms that could mean many things. And I don't think it takes that much extra time to write things out fully. When you're reading through it, if you don't know what it is, it makes it that much easier to not have to go in and dig through. Just
Thank
for an
you.
example, like LOS could be line of sight, level of service,
Sure.
length of snake, like.
OK. Monsieur Bourgon, dans les rapports, typiquement, quand on a un consulat qui nous fait un rapport, the practice, it was always the first time the acronym is used. And is it fair that we can have like a comment on dit ça là, en français, une table des matières qui démontre, pas une table des matières, mais une légende qui démontrait tous les acronymes, because I think they are commonly used, but whether we can make them easier, je sais pas, c'est Monsieur
Well,
Bourgon.
typically, we're trying to refer to the appropriate naming at the beginning, but certainly a comment that we can take back to see, to do the adjustment.
Okay, that's a valid
The
question.
goal is just like, when we did it at companies, the goal was that any piece of a document that was referred to externally would be understandable without any reference to the rest of the document. So if we're referring to a specific graph in the AMP, we don't need to go and refer to the original AMP to be able to understand all of the information within it.
Thank you. Duly noted. Thank you. Councillor Lauren, I saw your hand up. You're good? Okay. Mr. Hunt?
Yeah, I
Oh,
just wanted-
sorry. Councillor Deacon?
Thanks. I just wanted to mention that Mr. Hunt had brought this up with me previously, and we did discuss it at the Diversity Committee as well at the last meeting. And the committee, I can update because the committee didn't pass any specific motions about this, but had a discussion around how to make language more accessible and through acronym usage as well as removing acronyms. The committee did not put forward a recommendation, but did encourage members of council and administration, especially with agenda packages and when we're having discussions at this table, to avoid using acronyms as much as possible, so that those watching from home, those in the gallery can follow along.
Thank you. Mr. Hunt?
Yeah, I just had a quick clarifying question about, you mentioned in the AMP that we were looking at about 10 million a year for asset management costs. Does that include everything, or is that just tax-funded departments versus user-funded departments?
That includes all current assets as of this snapshot of 396 million.
And then you referred to 7 million that we had, 5.5 million from the budget. Where was the other 1.5 million from?
So those are expected grants coming in.
And
Monsieur Dagenet confirmed that that's accurate?
Yes, that's accurate,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
so last council meeting, I asked a question about the pretty drastic increases in our water costs, and we were told that that was for asset management. So I'm wondering where those increased costs are accounted for in this 7 out of 10 million.
I'm not sure I understand. Monsieur Dagenet, do you understand the question? I'm just
Yeah. It's in the 5.5 million.
Okay, so that 5.5 million is not just the 2% per year that we're increasing, it also includes the user fees?
That's correct, yeah. The 2%,
Perfect.
yeah, 1% in taxation is roughly $190,000.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hunt. Any other questions? Seeing none? All right, perfect. All right, so we'll move to resolutions. So we are separating, we have separated item H. Okay, so motion that council approve all recommendations listed under the agenda, under item 11, reports from departments and councils and committees. I need a mover and a seconder to put it on the table. So moved by Councillor Deacon, seconded by Councillor Lalonde. We have, so we'll call for the vote on all items except H, correct?
We need someone to propose the amendment.
Propose the amendment, thank you. So we have it on the table. I need Conseiller Lalonde proposes to remove item H. This is seconded by Councillor Deacon. I'll call for the vote on the amendment. The vote is passed, thank you. All right, so now we're going to vote on all items except item H. I'll call for the vote, all four.
Hold on. Wasn't there another item? Wasn't there another item that you wanted to
That's in the
pull out?
bylaws, I believe. Right?
Is it in the
bylaws,
bylaws?
yeah. So I'll call for, again, calling for the vote for all items except item H. All for, all against, or anyone against, so that passes, thank you. And now we'll move to item H. So I need a mover and seconder to put it on the table, so moved by Councillor Deacon, seconded by Conseiller Lalonde. Question, comments, amendments for item H. Conseiller Lalonde.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have some prepared text for sake of time. I just wanted to make the statement on the report, the new plan, that we're all pleased to share the new accessibility plan reflects our township's ongoing commitment to building a barrier-free community. This updated plan replaces the previous version, which was adopted back in 2014. It incorporates significant changes in accessibility legislation, also recognizes the evolving needs of our residents, and I'm particularly grateful for the hard work and persistence of the Accessibility Advisory Committee. Louis Savoie, as well, from administration, has worked very hard on this. This work was being done on this before I even joined council, so it goes back a few years. Also, a shout out to a resident in our township who has been a valuable asset from a distance and contributing some subject matter expertise, Mr. Brian Young. He's also made a very significant contribution to the work we've done. So since 2014, updates to the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act and related regulations have introduced new requirements for municipalities. These include stricter standards for digital accessibility, enhanced staff training, and greater consultation with people with disabilities. Our updated plan aligns with these changes and prioritizes improvements in communication, public spaces, and inclusive community engagement. So we're talking not just about, of course, our residents with physical disabilities, but also those with developmental disabilities. We're working particularly hard in that area of late. Alors, la mise à jour de ce plan d'accessibilité et ses objectifs ont été examinés par le directeur général et les chefs de département en août de cette année. La contribution de la communauté et les efforts et énergies de notre comité avisoire sur l'accessibilité restent essentiels pour façonner ce plan pour les années à venir, alors que nous travaillons à devenir une communauté sans obstacles. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'd like to propose a motion that Council approves recommendation 2024-02 from the Accessibility Advisory Committee with respect to the adoption of the accessibility plan for the Township of Russell.
So the original motion was to receive the report, and here we're proposing the adoption. So we have a mover for an amendment. Do I have a seconder on the amendment? And Madame Camille Laflamme, does the amendment make sense? Like from a...
So would it be just to substitute to receive or?
To be to adopt.
To adopt instead?
So I have a seconder to...
I had a question.
Oh, yeah, but we'll put the amendment has to be put forward, so, and I'm very happy that I remember that. So we have a seconder to put that amendment on the table. Questions, comments, members of council, Councillor Deacon.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I want to make sure that if we're adopting a plan like this, that it has the right resourcing behind it. And so I just want to ask perhaps to Councillor Lalonde if this has budgetary implication right away, any sort of resourcing questions, because I'm very much in support of this plan, getting it moving, and I want to make sure that it really hits the ground running and has the impact that the committee would hope for it to have.
Merci beaucoup, Conseillère Deacon. Before I pass that to Conseiller Lalonde, I would ask Monsieur Dagenet, in terms of the staff side of this, because I believe that this whole plan was reviewed by staff as well, or Monsieur Bourgon, this is supported by staff, correct?
Mr. Mayor, so yes, so every department had a chance to review the documentation. So if any concern, it would have been raised at budget discussion.
Okay, merci beaucoup. Conseiller Lalonde, anything to add on that?
Yeah, I appreciate the question or the request for clarification from Councillor Deacon. I'm fortunate to have both Louis Savoie and Sébastien Dagenet with me on this committee, so we get to look at the aspect of the amount of staff time. I would say in particular the last couple of years, as I mentioned earlier with Louis Savoie, there's been a very significant amount of time going through the legislation and updating our report, including preparing KPIs going forward. I know we're covered by budget right now. I hope that there'll be a little less strain in terms of the amount of time being spent and getting this report together on the part of some staff. And I think we're in good shape also with the idea that we have people, like we saw tonight, staff always looking for grant opportunities where we want to implement some of these actions. There will be grants available, and we will be out in front of that at every step of the way. So I'm confident that we're able to do this, as Monsieur Bourgon said, within the budget constraints.
Merci, Conseiller Lalonde. Councillor Deacon, any follow-up on that? That's good. Councillor Armstrong?
Yeah, just as a procedural step here, does this plan need just a resolution of council, or should we have this brought back as some sort of a bylaw?
It's approving a process. Madame Camille Laflamme, clarification on that?
Mr. Mayor, I do not believe we've ever adopted this by bylaw.
Bylaw, okay. So it
In the
was never
past.
adopted by bylaw, and hence it wouldn't have one. Okay, so we have an amendment on the table. Are we able to see it on the screen by chance, the amended version?
No, Mr. Mayor, but.
Or just read it, yeah?
Yep. I would just add at the end of the motion we already have on the agenda, at item H,
Mm-hmm.
11H of the agenda. Yep, the 11H.
Un peu plus haut, item H.
So I'll just say it
No,
in
just-
English, we would add at the end, and that council adopt the accessibility plan for the Township of Russell as presented. If
Okay.
that's,
So we have an amended version, and so I will call for the vote for the amended version. All those for? Against? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Lalonde. Okay, moving forward. Oh, yes, we need to adopt it as amended. Oh, I'm getting there, So we approve the amendment, and now we'll approve the resolution as amended. And so I'll call for the vote. All for, against, carried. C'est bon, Madame Camille-Laflamme? Oui? Oui? OK. OK, merci. Alors, on tombe aux bylaws. Et maintenant, Mme Camille-Laflamme, pour les bylaws, si on en retire une, est-ce que j'ai juste à pas la lire quand je lis la motion? Ça suffit, oui?
that's it. Yes, we can say except for
Okay.
bylaw.
Parfait. Alors, motion that council approve bylaws 2024-101 to 2024-108 inclusively, except for 2024-103. No?
Well,
c'est
we'll
pas
put
bon.
the full thing on the table first, and then we'll just ask that item to be separate,
Okay.
just like the.
Okay,
motion.
fair enough. So motion that council approve bylaws 2024-101 to 2024-108 inclusively for first, second, and third reading as listed on the agenda. So I need to put that on the table. That's moved by Councillor Lawrence, seconded by Councillor Armstrong. It is on the table, and so we need to remove it here. So I move her to remove item 2020, bylaw 2024-103 is moved by Councillor Lawrence, seconded by Councillor Armstrong. Call for the vote to remove item 2024-103. All for, against, passed. Okay, so now we'll do a motion that council approve bylaws 2024-101 to 2024-108, excluding 2024-103 for first, second, and third reading as listed on the agenda, and that's moved by Councillor Lawrence, seconded by Councillor Armstrong. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, and that brings us to bylaw 2024-103, being a bylaw to adopt the strategic asset management policy. I need a mover and seconder to put that on the table, so that's moved by Councillor Armstrong, seconded by Councillor Lalonde, and it is on the table, so questions, comments, members of council. Councillor Armstrong.
Yes, as I was the one that asked to come out, it's appropriate to start. If we go down, the third whereas in there, it's all members of council and board employees of the corporation. I'm not sure why that is in this particular bylaw. But in the end, though, I would replace that with a comment from the Infrastructure for Jobs and Prosperity Act 2015, which is the law that actually generates this entire process. And it says, as Section 1, the purpose of this act is to establish mechanisms to encourage principled, evidence-based, and strategic long-term infrastructure planning that supports job creation and training opportunities, economic growth, protection of the environment, and incorporate design excellence into infrastructure planning. And I would say simply, whereas by the Infrastructure for Jobs and Prosperity Act 2015 requires that, or has its purpose, it would set the context for this particular bylaw better than where we have it at the moment.
Okay, so I have a proposed amendment. Do I have a seconder on that amendment?
Could you read it again?
Councillor.
Okay,
Armstrong. For the seconder to discuss it, right? Madame Camille Laflamme, we need a seconder on the amendment to discuss it, correct?
No, we already had it on the table.
Okay, but the amendment per se that Councillor Armstrong is proposing, as soon as he mentions it, we could discuss it, correct?
Yes.
Okay, Councillor Armstrong, go ahead, sorry.
I would say, and whereas the Infrastructure for Jobs and Prosperity Act requires, purpose is to establish mechanisms to encourage principled, evidence-based, and strategic long-term infrastructure planning that supports job creation and training opportunities, economic growth, and protection of the environment, and incorporate design excellence into infrastructure planning. Therefore, be it, and we carry on with the bylaw.
Thank you. Councillor Deacon?
Just wondering about adding the year of the act to the, or I'm not sure if, you said 2015, but in the actual amendment, sorry, through you, I think we should add 2015.
So just referring the
Yeah.
act per se.
And we could get the legal title of the act, SO 2015, Chapter 15, all of that legal document added in, yes.
So before we move on that, I do have a question, and I'll give the floor to Councillor Lalonde. I would like to hear more, a little bit about the whereas that you would like to remove, and maybe from someone from staff, the rationale for why this is there, because we are mentioning code of conduct. And so that's an important piece that I don't want to just remove without understanding why we would remove it. So, Monsieur Bourgon. Monsieur Bourgon.
I would suggest to council that we take that bylaw, review it, and bring it back to the next councils to remove that one, use appropriate wording as highlighted by Councillor Armstrong, and also there's wording that was used in our 2018 bylaw that could be used for another whereas, referring to the proper act.
Okay, so we're proposing to defer
To
it.
defer and to bring it back on December
Okay.
9th, regular council meeting.
Okay, Conseiller Lalonde.
So I was pretty much going to suggest the very same thing. I'm not in disagreement with the word change. I just want to make sure it's accurate and up to
Absolutely.
date. And I think it's a good move for staff to come back with bringing some precision to that. Thank you.
Councillor Armstrong, thoughts on that?
It's just fine with me, thanks.
Okay. Any other comments on this item then? And so we are removing this item. Do we need to?
We'll need a vote on the deferral
On
to the
deferral,
next
okay.
meeting, so we can bring it back.
All right, so the amendment was proposed, and now we are proposing to defer until next meeting. C'est assez de temps, oui, oui, okay, so I need a mover to defer, a second, moved by Councillor Armstrong, seconded by Councillor Lauren. Call for the vote for deferral. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. Okay, new business reports, we have none. Other business presented by council members. So we have two. Item A, Councillor Deacon.
Thank you. So the item is budget brief. I wanted to just acknowledge that we had passed, the council had passed the budget on November 12th, which was the last regular meeting of council, acknowledging that there is a lot of work that goes into making public and telling, sending out the messaging around budgeting. It's a big project, and we obviously want to do it accurately and well. Budget sessions are viewable on YouTube. There was a first draft of the budget brief, but it's time for residents to have the updated budget brief so that they can start to understand just the different deliberations that happened, the difficult decisions that needed to be made. And the budget brief, in my experience, it's a wonderful piece to communicate some of the complexities behind our annual budget. So I would like to ask, I wanted to add this tonight, just to ask when we can expect that budget brief to be out, and frankly, can it be out as soon as possible is my real question, and done, well, but as soon as possible. It's a priority.
Thank you, Councillor Deacon. I think that's a very apropos question. I know that we have been working on it. Staff has been working on it. Last week, it was getting passed around for comments, feedback, and I was expecting it to be there at the end of the week. So I know that it is pressing. Maybe there is an update there, Monsieur Bourgon, Monsieur Dagenet.
The plan is to finish it this week. So
Can we go faster than this? Like, I mean, I don't want to wait till Friday. I think it's been 2 full weeks since we've adopted the budget. So, when you say this week, can I get a date? Like, not Friday?
well,
Est-ce que c'est
we'll do
possible
our
that-
best.
Okay,
In my mind, it's going to be done this week. So
okay. So I'd like to emphasize the importance of getting that out as soon as possible, Monsieur Bourgon, Monsieur Dagenet. Councillor Deacon, follow up?
Thanks, and I would just like to be sure, because there are a lot of places that people go for information about Russell Township that are not official places for information. So if I could ask for the administration's information tonight on where people will be able to find that information once it is shared, and how they can stay up to date on official Russell Township communications, I would appreciate that as well.
Thank you, Councillor Deacon. Monsieur Bourgon?
We'll be using our website and all our means of communication. So everybody that are registered to our newsletter will receive the notification.
Okay, fantastic. And I think typically we do have a Facebook page as well, and as soon as we release that data, it's released there as well, correct?
It is, and with the appropriate link to our website.
Yeah, that's really important. Thank you very much, Councillor Deacon. Great questions. Any other questions, comments on this item? No? All right, moving forward, I had a request for Monsieur Bourgon, an update on the rural intersections. We were supposed to receive this report in the fall, and I know you've been waiting for data from the OPP, so I just wanted to follow up with you on that.
Monsieur Mayor, so we're actually waiting for the data from the MTO, so Ministry of Transportation of Ontario.
Okay,
They are reviewing our application currently. When I did a follow-up early November, they were in the last stage of our review. So hopefully I'll obtain the access shortly, so we can assess that collision data, so I can complete the report.
okay,
So as soon as that's received, I'll be hopefully able to bring it to the following council meeting.
So just in terms of timeline, so if I understand correctly, the day you receive the data, within the next council meeting, you can present
Yeah,
the full
'cause
report.
our report's pretty much done.
Okay.
Just missing that
MTO.
evaluation, yeah.
Is there anything from my perspective that we can do to speed up that process with MTO?
My understanding, it's really the step-by-step at the ministry, so for their administration to review
Okay.
all the submission.
Okay, merci. We're looking forward to getting that information. All right. Moving, public consultations, we have none. Announcements, members of council, any announcements? I know that we have a couple of things to speak to. Councillor Deacon?
Thank you. I have two, building on what was in the consent items around the White Ribbon campaign. I wanted to draw attention, actually today, November 25th, is a National Memorial Day for women victims of intimate partner violence. And this kicks off 16 days of advocacy and action that each of us can undertake to end gender-based violence in our communities. I wanted to draw attention to a few things happening on December 6th in particular, which is, of course, remembering a terrible tragedy, the massacre at Polytechnique de Montréal. December 6th, there will be a benefit dinner for Maison Interlude. I have the honor this year of co-chairing the fundraising campaign for Maison Interlude. So there is a benefit dinner happening that evening in Alexandria. There are also 3 different vigils happening that day across Prescott and Russell, one of them, the nearest one, being in Castleman. So if folks want to look up, that's December 6th in Castleman, a vigil for National Day of Remembrance of Victims of Gender-Based Violence. I just want to say that in 2020, in this year alone, we've already lost 59 women and children killed by femicide in our province. And just last month, there were 3 women who were killed in Eastern Ontario. Lori Crew, Katrina Swalinski, and Brooke D. Berha. Excuse me.
Take your time.
It's important to say their names.
Absolutely.
So we all have a role to play in ending this violence. And there are a lot of options that we can take. We each have a role to play, and we can do what feels right and the steps that feel most true and authentic to us, that aligns with our resources and what we have. We can get informed about this issue. Those data that I was mentioning come from the Ontario Association of Interval and Transition Houses. We can help to break cycles of intergenerational trauma and violence that are in our own families and in our own communities. We can get support. We can speak up. On December 6th at that gala, we can be donating our dollars and standing in with the community in grief. Tonight I'm wearing the moose hide, which is an Indigenous movement to support women experiencing violence. And I just want to thank so much my colleagues here for wearing the white ribbon tonight and for considering what action that you will take as leaders and those in the room here in our community. Oh, I've still got wobbly voice. The second announcement that I wanted to make, and this is a learning opportunity for me, last week was International Men's Day, November 19th. And I know that there are men in our township here who are observing National Men's Day and observing the need for, men's mental and physical health by growing their mustaches throughout the month of November. So some of us at this table have lovely mustaches, which may or may not be related to that campaign.
Pas si drôle que ça.
But because this is international, last week was International Men's Day on the 19th, I wanted to take the opportunity to thank men in our community, including men at this table, who are such positive role models for my own 2 boys, and whose masculinity includes courage, leadership, strength, and protection, alongside vulnerability, care, kindness, and empathy. So happy belated International Men's Day to men in our community.
Well, thank you so much, Councillor Deakin. Really great announcements. Really appreciate it. And where it comes from. So I've got a couple more as well. So first of all, last Saturday, I attended the Warden's Banquet. I wanted to mention that at the Warden's Banquet, our former Mayor, Pierre Leroux, was recognized for his leadership, both here at the township, at the United Counties. And I also am extremely pleased to announce that Connie Johnson, a very important member of our community, a very involved community member here, was awarded the J.P. St. Pierre Award. Although she was busy doing what she does best at a trivia night, she will receive the award, I believe, this upcoming Wednesday at the United Counties meeting. So we're extremely proud to count her as one of our residents here in Russell Township. The other announcement real quick is just to point out we had 2 very successful Christmas parades. Unfortunately, I was not able to participate on Saturday. Thank you, councillors that participated on Saturday. And on the Sunday parade, I had the pleasure of walking down in Russell and had a fantastic experience with Councillor Deakin. Thank you very much for sharing that with me. These are great moments that make me feel so close to the community. C'est vraiment une opportunité où on voit toute notre communauté ressortir ensemble, puis vraiment c'est là qu'on voit vraiment notre esprit de communauté. Alors, j'étais très content de voir ça. There was a little incident on the Embrun one. I'm not going to give it any airtime. It's too bad, and that will get resolved as well. But thank you very much to the fire department for putting all that together. It's a lot of work every year, and certainly from my perspective, the Russell one was extremely well organized. And once again, I believe the fire department took action here in Embrun for another incident that happened, as it seems to every year, but just a small little. So congratulations to you and your team, Chief. Thank you. All right, any other announcements? Well, we have it. No, thank you very much. Item 21, strategic discussion, we have none. Item 22, closed session, we have none. Number 23, confirming bylaw. Confirming that bylaw 2024-109 being the bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of Russell Township at its regular council meeting held November 25th, 2024, be read a first, second, and third time and pass. And this is moved by Councillor Lauren, seconded by Councillor Armstrong. Call for the vote. Passed. Thank you. Our next regular meeting of council will be held on Monday, December 9th, 2024, and that will be our last meeting for 2024. So we are adjourned at 7:42. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a nice evening.